On values and value judgments. Let us begin by stating that all value judgments are comparisons. For instance, when I say somebody is taller or bigger, I'm comparing one unity with another unity, or one unity with my conception of a average. As regards to natural selection, the concept of superior inferior always pertains to the environment. That is, something is superior or inferior, fit or unfit in regards to the particular environment. And since everything is active, everything is fluid, and so is the environment, then the concept of superior and inferior is always fluctuating. And yet there are some value judgments which are more long-term than others. In other words, they're more timeless. For instance, somebody might be strong, but his strength might only last for the period of his youth. Whereas if somebody is intelligent or more intelligent, then this intelligence might last for the duration of his lifetime, and might even exceed his lifetime if he leaves as products of his intelligence works. In regards to human beings are not the largest species, they're not the fastest, they're not the most strongest, they don't fly, they are not the biggest, and yet they dominate. They dominate because they've evolved a characteristic which exceeds all other characteristics. That is, the ability to project, to imagine, to perceive, and then use these perceptions more efficiently. If we consider strength, the aggregate energies at the disposal of a will, the will being the focus of these energies upon an objective, then the more focus of the aggregate energies upon an objective, even though the aggregate energies in total might be inferior to another's, might exceed the power of the others, simply because of synergy. Therefore, an organism might be smaller, have less mass, less muscle mass than another, and yet it might overpower it simply because it has a stronger will. That is, it has a better, more superior, more advanced ability to focus the lesser aggregate energies at its disposal in relation to the others, which might be greater but are less focused. Now, in regards to human beings and their superior intelligence, we should first define what intelligence means. Intelligence is the accumulation, the collection of sensual information, the integration of said sensual information into cohesive mental models, more detailed mental models. That is, the more information you manage to absorb, process, and then integrate into cohesive mental models, the more powerful your brain is. But it doesn't end there. Then the brain takes these mental models and projects them into the future, into the unknown. In this way, gaining the advantage of efficiency and the effectiveness of being prepared. We can see here the advantage of a creature that has less mass, is smaller, has less aggregate energies at its disposal, and yet because it can exceed the immediate and project into the future, preparing for it, being able to successfully imagine the possibilities, its capacity to then overpower creatures that are superior to it, faster than it, more vicious than it, more promiscuous and productive than it. Also, with the ability to project, using the imagination, the creature can project itself, its consciousness, into the other creature, imagining itself as if it was the other creature, and then imagining what the other creature would do in a particular situation. And in this way, being able to prepare for this creature's behavior, even before the creature knows itself how it will act. It is this ability of the human mind to exceed its temporal limitations and also its physical limitations, which makes it a dominant species, even though it is not the fastest, it is not the strongest, it is not the largest, it is not the most vicious. In this way, man can exceed the natural standards of evaluation. That is, whereas in nature, superiority and inferiority are determined by fitness, that is the capacity to pass on one's genes. And with a human being, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. That is, even though it can produce less offspring than almost any other species, except a few, it is still more fit because its offspring have a higher potential of survival and a higher potential of being dominant over all other species. We also see here the difference between quantity and quality as being a temporal one, that is, one measured by temporality. That is, quantity is that which exceeds quality in its temporal effectiveness and its ability to resist temporal decay. For instance, a superior intellect will produce works of art, works of thought, which are more timeless. That is, they hold true for longer periods of time, whereas a superficial, a inferior mind might produce works of art or works of thought, intellectual work, but this work will be more constrained by time. That is, it will dissipate. And we see now the difference also in this difference in our own culture, where we see works of art being produced, and then the next year they are forgotten, replaced by other works of art, let's say music, and they become like a flavor of the month. In other words, their quality is so low that they have no capacity to endure and be classical. In other words, to be timeless. Quantity is about timelessness. It's measured by its capacity to endure the frictions of time. In other words, quality is measured by its ability to exceed its genetic limitations. And in this regard, human beings are superior to other creatures. But we shouldn't stop there. There's also differences within the species. Just as not all lions are equally strong or equally fast, more so because intelligence is so fickle and sensitive. And all human beings are ever equal in the one area where it matters. That is, whereas some might be bigger, stronger, faster, very few could be more intelligent, more aware, more conscious, more timeless in their capacity to perceive patterns, project these patterns effectively and efficiently and successfully, so as to not lose time pursuing goals that are unfeasible, unproductive, or that go against the individual's welfare. If we take intelligence as the one characteristic that defines what it is to be human, then we can only conclude that not all Homo sapiens are equally human. That is, not all of them have the same capacity to think beyond the immediate, to think beyond their genetic limitations, to think in a more timeless fashion. An added factor, and an equally important one, besides the capacity to perceive, that is sensual acuity, the capacity to project, that is imagination, is the capacity to endure what is perceived without having emotion, hope, fear intervene in the projections. In this way, mutating them, corrupting them, so that they become self-serving and flattering, but unsuccessful, because they are not driven with a clarity, but they are clouded by emotion, that is, by the immediacy of what the mind most wants to be true. So courage, along with analytical ability and imagination, are the three factors that we call intelligence. And it is this intelligence which differentiates man from all other creatures. This is what makes man able to exceed himself, to take himself out of the equation, to be more objective than beasts, and this way gaining an advantage over them. It is also this capacity which makes some humans dominate over others, exceed others, makes some races dominate over others, exceed them, surpass them, be their superior. So in conclusion, let me just reiterate that when we're talking about any value judgment, whether we're talking about strength, power, intelligence, speed, we're always talking about a comparison between one and another, or one and a group of others, or their average. There is no such thing as an absolute. Therefore, when we say something is strong, we're not saying that it is omnipotent. When we're saying somebody is knowledgeable, we're not saying that he's omniscient. Only a Christian deluded mind would fall for such childishness. We're always talking about comparisons. When we say a lion is powerful, we're not saying that it's omnipotent. We're saying that in comparison to other creatures, it is powerful. When we're saying a building is tall, we're not saying it's infinitely so. We're saying in comparison with the environment, with other objects, other buildings in its environment, that is tall. When we're saying somebody is fast, we're not saying his speed is infinite, his absolute speed. We're saying that in comparison to an average, or an average human being, let's say, or in comparison to another, this individual is more fast. So also, when we're saying that humans are more intelligent, we're not saying they're absolutely intelligent, or that they're gods. We're saying that in comparison to other living organisms, as man knows them, his capacity to reason, to think, to project, to endure what he perceives is far superior than any other creatures. And this is why he dominates.